There, my name is Carly Andrews. I am the Senior Project Coordinator for the North Dakota Brain Injury Network. You are viewing moderate to severe brain injury for educators. So just a little bit about NDBIN, or the North Dakota Brain Injury Network. Our director's name is Rebecca Quinn. She lives here in Grand Forks with me as well, or not with me, but we both live in Grand Forks. And then Nikki Livdalen, or Nicole Livdalen, is our resource facilitator. She lives in Towner. But we do serve the whole state, so please don't let where we live impact whether or not you reach out for support. You are welcome to fill out a referral form for more specific information, case-by-case consultation. That is available on our website at ndbin.org. Up in the top right-hand corner, you'll see referral. So let's get started here. So hopefully you have viewed Introduction to Brain Injury already, so I'm not going to go into how individuals sustain brain injury necessarily in this. So if that is something you want more info on, please view Introduction to Brain Injury. But basically, if a student sustains a brain injury and then returns to the classroom, we need to make sure that communication is happening amongst all teams involved with this student. So the family and the student, the school personnel, and the rehab team should all be on the same page. Everyone should be at the table. Like, you should have some kind of transition meeting, hopefully in person, and hopefully where you can see the space where the student will be using in the school, so that everybody is aware and can make the appropriate accommodations as needed before school even begins, before this child even returns to learn. So not all students with a brain injury are going to require like special education, IEPs and 504s and that type of thing. But there are some that might, and with those, please refer to us. We can try to help. And if you're not sure, and you know it's brain related, make a referral and it doesn't hurt. I mean, we'd rather be safe than sorry, right? But I find this stat interesting. Less than 2% of brain injuries are referred for special education services, when 16% should be. So that's a huge amount of kids that we are missing, because students with brain injury often fall through the cracks. They often are really good at saving face. Brain injury is not necessarily intellectual, so it can be cognitive in like our processing speed and things like that, but it's not necessarily an IQ change. And so a lot of times those kids are pretty good at saving face and pretty good at keeping it together, but really should be utilizing specific accommodations to help with their brain injury symptoms, and we can help support that. So to refer to us, you can call. We have a 1-855-866-1884, and Nikki, our resource facilitator, answers that Monday through Friday from about 8 to 4. There is that referral form on the website that I noted for you. Again, ndbin.org, and it's in the top right corner. Anyone can refer, the client or the student themselves, the family members, agencies, doctors, teachers. Anyone can make a referral. There's never a cost for any of our services. So brain injuries are very much like snowflakes. The effects vary greatly from student to student. A saying we often say at the Brain Injury Network is, you've met one person with a brain injury, you've met one person with a brain injury. They are all so very, very different, and what works for one may not work for the next person, but it might work for the person after that. So yeah, a lot of times with brain injury, the effects aren't noticeable and obvious at first, but they're going to become noticeable later when those thinking and social activities increase at school. Okay. So this is the possible outcomes of a brain injury. Again, possible. Our brain controls everything we do, so the outcomes are very possible that they are different from person to person. So my biggest one on here is the orange, the fatigue and impaired awareness. So I did talk about fatigue in some of our other slides, some of our other webinars on this EdHub. But fatigue for someone with brain injury, there's a primary and a secondary. So they have fatigue from the injury itself often, because our brain is responsible for our arousal. And there's also an impaired awareness, because there's a before and an after. This individual knew themselves and they had some skills acquired before, and now those skills are gone, and they have to kind of accept that as well as become aware of what's different now. Physical changes, those tend to resolve themselves within about 2 years after brain injury. But the ones that linger around are kind of those headaches. Sometimes people still have seizure activity. They may use, a walker or a cane or some type of physical aid like that. Cognitive changes, there is a whole webinar on that, so I am not going to talk about that too much, but basically our survivors report that it can be like moving through fog after brain injury. And so things like their processing speed and their attention especially need extra love after brain injury. And then finally, we have emotional behavioral changes. And those are the scariest parts for the people that knew that survivor prior to injury, and to the survivor themselves. They might not be aware as to why their emotions can be so dysregulated, and they really need a lot of support in managing that emotional dysregulation after brain injury. So this is a really nice graphic from Colorado, and basically it shows that time reveals rather than heals. So you see here, the blue and the green are together, like we've developed normally. Then we have an injury and we see a dip, right, in development. And then we see, kind of an okay. And then we start to see that neurocognitive stall once we start to, like we said, do more socially, things more socially, do more cognitive activities. This is another one. I'm sorry, that last one wasn't from Colorado. This one was from Brain Injury Association of America. This one now is from Colorado, and I love this because this really explains the way that we develop, the way children develop. So we have our fundamental processes, and then as we mature, the complexity increases, leaving us to like the highest level, which is like reasoning, right? And those executive functioning, those adulting skills, okay? So this is typical standard development building blocks for the brain. But this is what happens after brain injury, okay? So look what went away. Attention went away. Many people with brain injury also carry an ADD or an ADHD diagnosis as well. And we at the Brain Injury Network look at that as a symptom, whereas the cause is the brain injury and a symptom is that ADHD. So we really want to be thinking about that. But then you can see that all these other areas of brain development really got tumbled around, and they're not going to probably go into that nice direct order like you saw before, okay? So one key concept to take away from this chat today is it's essential to have a comprehensive evaluation of a child's pattern of cognitive strengths and weaknesses after a brain injury. We highly recommend getting a full battery neuropsych exam after brain injury, and that is something that you want to continue to get probably about every couple of years, and if you have another injury, definitely after that. But it varies from person to person, but at the most, I'd say 5 years in between neuropsych exams. Make sure you are utilizing your related service providers. It takes a village after brain injury. Again, the brain controls all that we do, so the impacts can be on everything we do. So we need to look at vision, we need to look at speech, not necessarily for articulation and word pronunciation, but for cognition. Speech therapists are really good, like cognitive therapists is what I think their titles should be. Occupational therapists, social workers, special education, adapted physical education, and many others. It really depends on the student and the severity of their injury, and all of their personality traits and their family makeup and all that stuff makes a huge difference. So expect that the team for this child will be pretty large. So as far as brain injury in adolescence or young adulthood, we need to create a shift toward independence, okay? So kind of, I taught for 10 years prior to this role, and I think we get that Velcro para, right? Or that Velcro adult that really becomes that student's executive functioning skills. But we need to make sure that they also learn how to do some of this stuff for themselves too, because you're not going to be with them. That Velcro para is not going to be there with them throughout their lifespan. Brain injury can create an identity disconnect. So like, who am I now versus who should I have been? So there can be some grief over that, lost potential. Sometimes they feel like they're unable to resolve their sense of self. But there are a lot of measures of self-worth, and we need to make sure we keep in mind that education, job, family, friends, home life are all considered when we're looking at those measures. There can be some challenges with interventions with this population with more than moderate to severe brain injury, because there can be a lack of awareness of one's own challenges. Again, if they had acquired skills before, now these skills are a little bit different, like driving, for example. Many people lose their license after brain injury, and that can be very hard, and that's challenging for that person to accept, okay? Deficits in building block skills impact later skills, okay? So those building blocks that we looked at, when there's deficits in the bottom areas, then it's going to kind of have a compounding effect with the ones on the top too. So they all need to kind of develop ideally together and work together. So when there's deficits, we'll see impacts in skills. And then there's a whole section on behavior after brain injury, but basically survivors with brain injury do not respond to traditional behavioral modification. They respond best to positive reinforcement, and they respond best to antecedent-based interventions, meaning if we intervene before we even get to the behavior, so what happened right before the behavior, if we look closely at that and analyze that and look for patterns and look for triggers basically for that student, then we can try to make their environment better so that they aren't so triggered and then they get to that behavior, right? Brain injury can look a lot like ADHD and a learning disability, okay? So here are some of the ways that we can help kind of weed that out a little bit, even though it can be really hard to tell. But basically, if they retain their old skills, but they have difficulty with new learning, that's a sign of a brain injury, because our short-term memory is most impacted by brain injury, not our long-term. Usually our long-term stays pretty intact. We might see peaks and valleys of performance with someone with brain injury. So they might do really well some days and not so good other days. And that can play a role. That can be because of fatigue. That can be because of environmental factors. That can be, medication was forgotten that morning. It can be a lot of different things, but you'll notice these individuals very inconsistent performance. Executive function. So you'll see that someone with brain injury is going to struggle with those executive functioning skills more than someone with probably just a learning disability or ADHD. They're going to struggle with, again, those adulting, the reasoning, the planning ahead, and the thinking about like budgeting, for example. I get paid on Friday and I have to make it last until 2 Fridays from now, and how am I going to manage that, rather than going out and spending it all, impulsively. There can be a lot of social and behavioral difficulties after brain injury. These individuals tend to go from 0 to 60 pretty quickly. And again, they respond poorly to behavior modification. So there is a stat that I talk about in Introduction to Brain Injury that up to 87% of those involved in the criminal justice system have a history of a brain injury. And so that right there is kind of sums up that poor response to behavior modification, right? They do not always learn from typical consequences that we would all think of. I'm sad to report, I wish there was, but there is no magic wand, okay? Every brain injury is so different, and we are more than happy to consult, and that's a big part of my job. But I just want you to keep in mind that I don't have a magic answer. I don't have a magic pill or a wand or anything I can wave to make this all go away. But there are a lot of techniques and strategies that we can utilize to really alleviate symptoms and make life for this survivor better. I really like this quote. While the rest of the world is trying to get ahead of the ball, the brain injured person is trying to determine what the ball is, where the ball is, and perhaps even why the ball is. And that's a survivor of brain injury. So again, that whole processing speed piece and just that delay in cognition really weighs on that person. So what are we going to do about it? Some accommodations we can make. Frequent reviews, and I usually recommend like a pre and a post process review as well. But again, that short-term memory was impacted, so they're going to need a lot of reminders. If we can provide a touchstone person, not necessarily a Velcro para, but a touchstone person, someone just kind of touch base with, and hey, can I double check that my notes look right? Or would you look at my paper? Or where are we going again after school today as a class? You know, different things like that. A structured environment is going to help a ton. Routine. When you can know what's coming, when your brain knows what's coming next, we do much better. So anytime you can provide structure and a heads up, that can really help. Also with anxiety too, it really helps us know how things might play out and give us, you know, our nervous system a chance to calm down. We really want to focus on what to do, not what not to do. So this is that whole, instead of when kids are running in the hallway, we want to say walk, right? Don't say don't run. We want to say walk. We want to tell them what they want them to do. And then we really want to focus on those antecedents, those triggers. What bothers that kiddo? What is going on? Is it the lighting? Is it the sound? A lot of kids end up with tinnitus, like a ringing in their ear. It can vary from person to person, but we want to look at what's triggering this student to either, you know, not pay attention or to have behavior outbursts and things like that. These are some things that are recommended from actual survivors that I work with. The ladies and gentlemen that I got these from are currently in school, and a lot of them are in post-secondary school, which is very exciting. But these ladies recommended extended times on exams and quizzes. Again, that processing speed, they just need more time to think about the questions being posed. Digital textbooks can be really helpful. So if your subscription came with a digital couple, letting that student with brain injury have access to that. So the font, mostly for the font, but they can also highlight, they can do a lot of other things. Having a note taker when the person is in class, or there's some technology out there now that you can even have basically like closed captioning live in front of you. I forget what it's called, but if you're really interested, contact me and we can find it out. But basically it's a screen that's in front of your classroom, and it is taking down everything that you're saying so people can read it as well. Smart pens, can't say enough about smart pens. My girls, particularly my women that I work with, love their smart pens. So there's different features, but basically you can make a certain mark on paper, and that pen will record from that time forward. And then when that student is reviewing later, they can touch that point of the paper where they made that mark, and the recording will, whatever you were talking about at that time, will come back up in their review, so they can kind of take notes better. A lot of kids or survivors of brain injury like online formats, because they can pause, they can rewind. So this is more when it's recorded, I guess. Maybe not necessarily a live online format, but a recorded one, or letting them have the option to record would be great. And that is about it. I did cite some fact sheets in here that came from the Multi-Skills Translation Center, which we use a lot at the Brain Injury Network. They actually presented at our conference a couple of years ago now, but yes, they're returning to school after TBI is what I cited a lot throughout this presentation. But again, don't hesitate to let us know if you need help with any students. We are more than happy to help. So looking forward to hearing from you. Thanks.